Hello, welcome to all. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, based on where you are. Let me just make sure that you guys are able to hear me. So, all those who are there in this session, please put a yes on the chat so that I know that you guys can hear me fine before we get into the session. So, that way we'll know that you guys are here and you guys can hear me. So, I'll just wait for a couple of seconds because there's always a delay between YouTube and where we stream from. All right. Thanks for the confirmation, Aditya, Dania. Thanks a lot. Welcome. So, very happy to see you guys here. It's been a while since I have done a YouTube session. So, I mean, I've been taking a lot of those internal GMAT sessions, but it's been a while since we've done a YouTube session. So, I'm very happy to be here. Let me first introduce myself. My name is Harsha. I'm one of the RC experts at E-GMAT. Some of you who are eGMATers may also know me from critical reasoning. So, I also handle critical reasoning. So, we have a cracker of a session here for you today. It's very different from the sessions that we normally do for reading comprehension. Assisting me in today's session is Kanupriya, who's also one of the senior most subject matter experts at eGMAT. And at the outset, let me thank GMAT Club for this opportunity. It's great when we do these sessions and interact with students. It's very important for us to understand the pulse of what's going on in the GMAT world. So I hope you guys are looking forward. Today's session is all about how to get all your RC questions correct. It sounds like a very ambitious thing, right? Getting all your RC questions correct. What do I mean by that? Before we proceed into the discussion, let me just ask one question to get a pulse of all of you here. If you had to do your own self-evaluation in terms of your own self-evaluation of your RC ability, where would you say you fit in? Are you 0 to 50% in terms of your RC ability? This is your own self-evaluation. If you had to peg yourself, where do you come in? Are you 50 to 75%? Or is your understanding at that level where you're 75 to 90% in terms of your RC ability? If you're scoring yourself out of 100, or are you one of those Zen masters who's at 90 to 100%? This is your own estimation of your RC ability. I'm doing this just to get a pulse of the batch that we have here today, all of you here today. So just put it on the chat where you peg yourself, and let's accordingly have a sense of where we are all together. So I can already see some responses coming in: 0 to 50, 50 to 75, and be brutal. This is a very low risk environment, right? Nobody's judging you, nobody's judging me. So quite a few 50 to 75s. That seems to be a bulk of what I see here. 80 to 90% thanks to LSAT. That's great. A, that's 0 to 50. 75 to 90, one more. 0 to 50, one more. All right. So quite a few 0 to 50s, quite a few 50 to 75s. It's very interesting that RC, though honestly, if you ask me, RC is one of the easiest sections. RC has been a pain point for a lot of people. So I hope that this session helps some of you to be a little more confident about RC, be a little more enthusiastic about RC. So this session is all about how you can reach that level of mastery where most, if not all, RC questions you can do confidently and you can do correctly. What does it really take? So before that, the first question that I typically ask is, why do you want to focus on RC itself? A lot of people do not enjoy RC. I'm sure if I ask you the question, how many of you truly enjoy RC? A lot of you will come and say, hey, man, I don't enjoy RC at all. RC is sneaky. Absolutely, it's very sneaky. And a lot of people do not enjoy it. It's because of the topics. It's because it's long. SC questions are so short and so sweet. On the other hand, RCs are monsters. It's like full 450-word passages you get. So a lot of people have this apprehension about RC. But let me tell you why you should focus on RC. Firstly, a score of 730 plus, it will pretty much require you to get a 90th percentile or higher ability as far as RC is concerned. That's one reason. I'll tell you the real reason why you should focus on RC. If you ask me, RC is a low-hanging fruit. In compared to SC and even compared to CR, if you look at verbal, RC has much fewer concepts to worry about. SC, you have tons of concepts. CR, boldface has a different approach. Inference has a different approach. Your entire assumption, evaluate, strengthen, weaken, that has a different approach. RC has a very small set of rules, a very coherent set of rules which apply all across. What that means is, put in the right effort, use the right processes, RC becomes very easy to master. Or in other words, you can make RC your fortress. It's what you call in corporate terms as low hanging fruit, easiest thing to crack. So, for those of you who are very skeptical about RC, hopefully by the end of the session, I can change a little bit of that. All right. So, now let's talk about the core title of today's session. What does it take to reach that level of mastery? A lot of people have this misconception that practice, practice, practice like a maniac, you'll get there. It is true in very rare cases. There's no point in practicing 10,000 questions without learning anything from it. If you're learning nothing from it, what's the point of practicing 10,000 questions? The key is to not really solve 10,000 questions. Of course, you can do that, but the real core way to do well in a subject like RC is to learn from each and every question that you solve. Rather than solve 10,000 questions and not learn a thing, do 50 questions but extract the maximum possible learning from 50 questions. Even if you do just 50 questions, the patterns that you will learn, if you're able to imbibe those, you don't have to solve 10,000 questions. And that's kind of the philosophy of eGMAT also. Rather than asking you to solve tons of problems, we ask you to do a very strong review of the problems that you actually solve. It's not about solving 10,000 questions. And it is with that philosophy that this entire session is designed. It's not about solving 10,000 questions, but it's about solve 50 questions, but understand the root cause of any mistake that you make. What do I mean by that? In an RC question, in the context of an RC question, if you rejected an incorrect option choice, if you rejected a correct option choice, why did you do that? What was the root cause that caused that error? If you can understand that, then you know how to avoid it in future. Likewise, if you selected an incorrect option choice, what made you choose the correct option choice? What was the underlying decision point? What was the underlying thought process that made you choose that? If you see that underlying pattern, you'll be able to avoid it in future. What else? Even sometimes you reject an incorrect option choice, but you reject it for a wrong reason. That means you've not really understood the essence of it. In such a situation, yet again, understand the root cause, you'll be able to avoid those mistakes in the future. The really strong performers, as far as RC is concerned, what they do, it's not that they solve 10,000 questions. They solve 50 questions, but they're very rigorous with their review process. Understand why mistakes happen, then you know how to avoid those mistakes. You put in plans to avoid those mistakes. So that's kind of what the core focus of the session is. We're going to look at something called the strategic review. It's essentially a process that's oriented to making you think about why you made a particular mistake, trying to identify the root cause. Once you've identified your mistakes, you can document them as an error log. I'll also be showing how to make an error log, a typical template that you can use. And once you start documenting your errors, both at an individual level, you get several micro learning points. At an aggregate level, it will start telling you where you are struggling. For different people, the actual problem area might be different. For somebody, the reason is that they don't focus enough on the question stem. That actually happens in RC. Sometimes the questions are confusing. If you rush through the questions, you're bound to make mistakes. For some people, passage comprehension is still not strong. It's not the question, it's the passage. So you can make an error log, and once you aggregate, you also see where is it that you are faltering, and therefore you can plug in corrective actions. Corrective actions, in simple words, think what is it that you need to do to ensure that you're never gonna make the same mistakes ever again in your life. We'll also talk a little bit about reading strategies. We'll use it somewhat in this session, and when we are solving the passages. Reading strategies essentially help you proactively avoid. Error log will help you reactively avoid them in the future. You made the mistake, but how do you avoid it in the future? Reading strategies are strategies that can help you avoid these mistakes right there. All right. So, are you going to take up questions types? We are going to look at quite a few questions in this session. We're going to take up a couple of OG passages and modified OG passages and solve through them. I'm not. I don't remember if we have a global inference question in this particular set that we have for you today. I don't think so. But yeah, that's to answer your question. But very interesting session planned out anyway. So the fundamental idea of the session: how do you get your RC questions correct? By discussing how do you by identifying where mistakes happen, why a mistake happens, and how to avoid them. It's as simple as that. So very quickly, what we're going to do in the next couple of in the next 1.5 hours, we're going to see why mistakes happen. we are going to take a short passage. It's a modified OG passage. So it's an OG passage, but I've modified it slightly to reduce the length. Modified OG passage, which will illustrate to you what are these error types that I'm talking about. Then you guys are going to solve a full length passage, OG passage 700 level, 4 questions. And then you guys are going to discuss the passage. And through the discussion, firstly, I'm going to demonstrate to you use of some of the reading strategies. And more importantly, you're going to focus on how do you do the strategic review to identify the possible errors that you made and what is it you need to do. All right. So good. I hope you guys are looking forward. Let's hear a positive, yes or something before we begin this. It's always good to have a little positivity in these sessions, especially because it's at least in India, it's a late evening session. I'm sure a lot of you are tired. So let's put in some energy into this. Yeah. So let's talk about why mistakes happen in reading comprehension. Now, this is a very, very important piece. Fundamentally, when you look at any question that you have in RC, right? What is your RC question typically? There is a passage, right? There is a question, and then you have 5 options: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you really ask the question, hey, why do mistakes happen, when where do mistakes happen, then you'll really see that it's only some of these points. It's either here, here, or here, or something in between. So one place where mistakes happen, and one reason why mistakes happen, is because you've not understood the passage itself properly. There will be some sentence that you have not understood properly, and maybe the question is based on that one sentence. That happens sometimes. You guys have all seen it. So a mistake can happen at the passage level, and within the passage level there are 3 sub levels: sentence level, paragraph level, and the overall passage. Let me give you an example. At the passage level, a typical question that you see on the GMAT is your main point question. Your main point question fundamentally is a passage level question. What is the central idea or core theme of the passage? If you have not understood the passage at the passage level, answering a main point question, tricky. Let's look at paragraph level. A typical question that you see: what is the function of the second paragraph in the scheme of the passage? If you have not understood what's happening in that paragraph and in relation to the overall passage, then that's a question you typically struggle with. Sentence level, a typical example, it could be inference questions, detailed questions. You'll always see a question which says, hey, there's this quoted text in the question. What can be inferred based on this? And then you will have 5 options. If you have not really understood what the sentence is trying to tell you, then good luck answering this question correctly. So this is what I mean when I say there are 3 fundamental sub-levels where you can go wrong. Either sentence level you're not clear, or the overall paragraph. Paragraph essentially is the combination of sentences. As far as an RC passage is concerned, you have sentences. Sentences form paragraphs. Paragraphs forms the passage. That's it. Your error could be at any of these points, and you have to really drill deep and understand why you made that error. And that's what we're going to do with this session. Passage apart. Let's say you understood the passage beautifully. Where else can you go wrong? One typical place where you can go wrong is the question stem. In RC, sometimes you will always see questions that are convoluted, questions that are tricky. If you do not pay attention to the question, you can go wrong. A simple example, the question could be asking you for what is a third party opinion. Let's say some critic. The question is asking you for what does the critic believe. If you do not pay attention to that, you would assume the question is what is it that the passage says, and then you would go wrong. Even if you have understood the passage correctly, if you have not understood the question stem, good luck getting the right answer. So there is a hierarchy. This arrow is trying to tell you that there's a hierarchy. First, you need to understand the passage. Then you need to understand the question. Then typically you will always come across some questions where if you do some level of analysis, the answer choice is very obvious. Say the answer choice is option B. We're going to see a demonstration of this, where if you have done a bit of pre-thinking before you jump into the options, after you read the question, in this gap, if you do a little bit of analysis, which is what we at eGMAT call as pre-thinking, if you do that, finding the right answer is very easy. If you do not do that, the minute you look at this correct answer, you're like, how is this relevant to this question? So there are some questions like that where your error actually stems from you not actually doing the necessary analysis. The last portion, as you guessed, is option choice analysis. This is again a place where a lot of students falter. A lot of times it's a question of stamina as well. You've done all the hard work understanding the passage. You've put in your effort to understand the question stem properly, and then you get lazy while analyzing the option choices. If you screw up here, yet again you can go wrong. So I hope so far so good. Right now we are just theoretically looking at why mistakes happen at a very very broad level. You're not, either you do not understand the passage well, could be sentence, paragraph, or passage level, or you did not focus on the question stem. There's something there you did not understand properly, or you didn't do the required analysis. That's the pre-thinking, or somewhere in the option choices you messed up. So now what we are going to do is we are going to get right into practicals. I'm going to give you a particular case study. It's just a short passage. It's a modified OG, so it's not exactly the OG. I've modified it slightly. I'm going to give you somewhere around 2.5 to 3 minutes to read this because it's a short passage. After this, three questions. Very very quickly, one thing, make sure that you don't put the answers on the chat here. Don't put it on the live chat. All answers on the Microsoft form that will be shared. We will share a chat on the chat. We'll share a Microsoft form with you. Just choose the answer there. That's more than enough. All right, so all the best, guys. All right, guys. Let's bring in the first question now. It should take you around 1 minute roughly. That's your typical time. So KP, if you can help by providing them the form link. Yeah. All right, now it's time to move to the next question. So here's question 2. Form will be shared on the screen, all right? Or the chat. All right, folks, let's take another 10-15 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now let's move to the last question, question 3. All right, guys, let's take another 10 seconds and then let's start discussing this. Or I'll give a little more time because it seems that some of you are still figuring this out. All right, guys, last 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. And let's hold. So, how are we feeling? Let's get a sense of how are you guys feeling about this? Easy, difficult? How was it? While you guys put in some comments, let me just calculate the results from the polls that we just did. Mhm. All right. So yes, Eshadri, there was a difference between those two options. They are not the same. So some of the people have pointed that out correctly. Difficult, tricky, moderate, easy, medium. That's fine. Gobsmacked. All right. So we're gonna simplify this now. So pay a lot of attention. So the focus of the next 5-10 minutes would be to understand this passage and then do the strategic review. So pay some attention right now. Let me come to this. Yeah. So needless to say, guys, this was not an easy passage at all. It's not at all an easy passage. It's not too difficult also if you apply the right processes. So pay a bit of attention. This might be useful for some of you at least. Is there a massive black hole at the center of a galaxy? The Milky Way. So the author starts off with a question. The second line is very, very interesting. You see what the author has done. The author asked a question and then he or she answered it right there. Is there a massive black hole at the center of the Milky Way galaxy? See, the evidence is inconclusive. The author has already provided some kind of an answer here. It's like he's made a conclusion right here. Then, if I ask you the question, what do you expect will follow in the subsequent passage? You can already predict what can happen. If you think about it, very, very simple, right? The author raised a question, the author even provided the answer. What we still don't know is why does he or she believe this is the answer? So, in all probability, what I expect to see here is why does the author say the evidence is inconclusive? The rest of the passage I'm going to read with that prediction that, hey, I'm going to see why the evidence is inconclusive. Keep that in mind, keep the thread open in your mind as we proceed to the next portion. All right. Just as. Now, just as is a very, very important keyword. Keywords are very specific words or phrases that give you some layers of meaning. What does just as mean? There are two meanings of it, by the way. One of the meanings is comparison. Two things are being compared, just as x, y, which means x and y are similar. So there are two entities being compared. Those two entities, you can say A or B, X or Y, I don't care. But when you say just as X, Y, just like X, you also have Y. So what the author is trying to tell you is there are two entities here that are similar. So what are those two entities? Just as the sun's mass can be determined given knowledge of other variables by the velocity at which its planets orbit, the mass of the center of the Milky Way can be revealed or determined by the velocity of the stars and the gas orbiting the galactic center. It's actually easy to figure out. There is a comparison. Just the exact same way you can calculate the mass of the sun if you know the velocities of the planets that orbit the sun. In a very similar way, if you know the velocities of the stars and the gas that orbits a galaxy, you can also calculate the mass of the galactic center, whatever the object is at the galactic center. That's something you'll be able to figure out from this particular line. Again, whenever you see, this is a pro tip from me. Whenever you see comparisons in your passage, pay attention to them, because the comparisons like this are some of the most extensively tested concepts on the GMAT RC. You will invariably have at least one option choice somewhere which is testing you on whether you paid attention to the comparison. What do I mean by comparison? Just as x and b, which means x is similar to is similar to y in some way. Another example, a is taller than b. So that's a comparison. I'm not telling you a is tall. I'm only telling you that a is taller than b. That's a comparison. A is being compared with b, and the nature of the comparison is a is taller. You need to learn to pay attention to this because a lot of times this is tested. So everybody with me so far? I hope you guys are with me so far. Let's move on. So, firstly, is there a black hole at the center of the Milky Way? The evidence is inconclusive as per the author. Now, the author started to tell us. See, similar to how mass of the sun can be calculated using velocity of the planet surrounding orbiting it, mass of the galactic center can also be calculated. Fantastic. What else? This dynamical evidence, which is based on recently confirmed assumptions about the star's velocity. The question you should ask is, what is this dynamical evidence referring to? What is this evidence? One clue is right here, based on assumptions about the star's velocity. In the last line, we saw that if you know the velocity of the star, you can calculate mass. What mass? Not mass of the sun, mass of the galactic center, whatever is there at the center. So this dynamical evidence is actually referring to what can be calculated based on stars' velocities. And what is that? The mass of the galactic center. It's very important to pay this level of detail to all this. So this dynamical evidence, based on assumptions about the star's velocity, etc., argues for, or in other words, it supports the notion that I'm arguing for something. I'm supporting that notion. So it supports the notion that there is this extremely compact object at that center with a mass that is 2 to 3 million times the mass of the sun. So at least they seem to be trying to indicate that it's very, very heavy. So at this point, I'm not sure, but extremely compact with extremely high mass. What does it indicate to you? If I had to, the two words would be its density is high, right? That's what it seems like. Everybody with me so far? Let's just get a yes, no. If so far you guys are with me about what this passage is all about. I just want to ensure that you guys are on the same page. Pay attention to the level of detail, how I'm breaking down each and every sentence and going through it. Perfect. So, the dynamical evidence is basically the mass that was calculated thanks to this above method. It argues for, or it supports the notion that whatever is that object which is there at the galactic center of the Milky Way, it's extremely compact. Its mass is 2 to 3 million times the mass of the sun. That's what we have so far. Now let's move on. Although is yet another keyword which indicates contrast. Although something happened, something else happened. So there's some kind of contrast that is going to be presented. Although, according to the current theory, this makes the mass of the center of the galaxy too dense to be anything but a black hole. Let's pause here. So, what is it that's is being said here? So, according to the current theory, whatever is that mass at the center, it's too dense. The density is too high, extremely compact, mass 2 to 3 times the mass of the sun. At this density, the only possibility is that it is a black hole. It cannot be anything except a black hole. Everybody with me, because sometimes a lot of students actually ask me the doubt about, when you say anything but a black hole, does it mean that it is a black hole, or does it mean that it is not a black hole? Some of you might have this doubt. I'm not sure in this batch how many of you have that doubt, because most of you got the answers right. But for those of you who have that doubt, let me quickly explain that as well. I've given an example for this. When I say Charles is anything but nice, what I'm trying to tell you is, hey, Charles is not nice, right? Charles is anything except nice. Charles is not nice. Now, I've just added something else to that sentence. Charles is too well mannered to be anything but nice. Here I'm saying is that, hey, what I'm saying is, this guy is so well mannered, you cannot call him anything except nice, which means Charles is nice. You see how just by adding a particular phrase, the meaning tilts by 180 degrees. For those of you who had a little bit of doubt about it, am I saying that it is a black hole, or am I saying that it's not a black hole? Your answer is here. What you see in the passage is this: the mass at the center of the galaxy is too dense to be anything but a black hole. This is similar to your sentence 2. Or in other words, what the author is trying to say is, hey, as per this mass calculation, it seems to be a black hole. It has to be a black hole. It's too dense. The density is too much to be anything except a black hole. So I assume that you guys have got this. So what do we have here? So as per the current theory, such a dense mass, it cannot be anything but a black hole. It can only be a black hole. That's the point. So where is the contrast? So although as per the theory, it can only be a black hole, the problem is the lack of energy radiating from this thing. the relative lack of energy radiating from the galactic center. It presents a serious problem. So if you think about it, what is the author trying to say? Lack of energy is a problem. Or in other words, if that object at the center of the black hole, at the center of the galaxy, it was a black hole, then the energy it should radiate or emanate should be much higher. But the problem is lack of energy. It's not radiating as much actually. So actual energy from the galactic center is lesser than what we would expect from a black hole. And this is what the author is calling as a serious problem. Now let's move on. When the actual energy emanating from the galactic center, that is your energy actual, if you want to write it down, is compared to theoretical predictions of energy had there been a black hole at the galactic center. So if that object indeed was a black hole, then it should have emanated some particular energy. But in reality, it's not emitting that much energy. There's a discrepancy by a factor of a few thousand. Or in other words, there is this difference, and this difference is some few thousands, let's say 3K or 4K or whatever it is. This is what the author is telling you. Now, what is the problem with this? Why is it a problem? Because it seems to indicate that the object is not a black hole. If it was a black hole, it should be emitting much more energy. So, if you actually combine everything you've read in this passage, the mass side indicates that the object is a black hole. That mass, that density, it cannot be anything except a black hole. It has to be a black hole. The energy side, on the other hand, is telling you that lack of energy. It doesn't seem like a black hole at all, which is why the author said the evidence is inconclusive. I'm connecting it back to the very second line of the passage. I hope you guys are getting how these passages are constructed. The author asked a question. That question is, let's talk about what is there at the galactic center of the Milky Way galaxy. Is that a black hole? Yes or no? That's the question. The author answered the question. He told you the evidence is inconclusive. You cannot say for sure. Then the author explained why. On the mass side of things, on the density side of things, it looks like it's a black hole. On the energy side of things, you cannot be sure it's a black hole. It does not seem to be a black hole at all. So therefore, overall evidence inconclusive. Which is why, if you had to ask you a main point question, it would be something like, the author is trying to tell you why something is unresolved, why something the evidence is inconclusive. Everybody, I hope you guys are with me so far. If you guys are with me, let's hear a yes while I move on to the next portion. That's the questions. So if this is clear, now we can fly through the questions. Let's get to it. So what's the first question? Which of the following best describes the comparison in the sentence highlighted? Now, this is a pure inference question that relies on one sentence. If you understood this sentence, you got the correct answer. If you did not understand these questions, you probably did not get the correct answer. Most of you have got the correct answer, which I'm very happy to see. So again, what are the two entities that are being compared here? The mass is not being compared. If the mass of the sun and the mass of the galactic center are being compared, what is the nature of the relationship? Is the mass of the sun greater? Is it lesser? Nobody told us that. That's not being discussed in the passage. What are the entities being compared? Not the mass, the method of calculating mass. The author says that just as this method exists, this other method is very similar. So just as the sun's mass can be calculated, similarly, the galactic center mass can also be calculated. The comparison is between methods, and the nature of the comparison is that methods are similar, which is why the answer for this question is option C. If I look at the stats for this question, I'm happy to see most of you got it. 75% of the batches got it. But here's the learning for 23% of you. 23% of you chose option B. For me, if you chose option B, that means this is what I call as a failure to understand the passage at the sentence level. There is the sentence that you did not understand, and you did not understand. That's why you chose option B. In fact, all the options here you would choose because you do not understand it, but specifically mass, because mass is the trap there. You would assume that it's mass if you do not understand the nature of the relationship. So for the 23% who chose option B, I hope it's very, very clear now why option C is the correct answer for this question. So let's talk about the strategic review. What do I mean by strategic review? Strategic review simply means that for any correct option that I did not choose, or for any incorrect option that I chose, or for any incorrect option choice that I rejected for a wrong reason, I properly analyze what is the gap in my thought process. Where is it that I screwed up? For instance, I might have chosen option B here. If I chose option B, that's a clear sentence level. I do not understand what is happening in the sentence really, and that's why I lost it. So that's how you note it down. Hey, this is where you screwed up. When you're doing the pre-thinking for this question, it again boils down to whether you understand the sentence or not. So that's it's basically a sentence level problem. This is a simple example, but we're going to build on it. So let's do question 2. So question 2 is an example. So the first example of question 1 was an example of a failure to understand the passage in the failure and passage comprehension at the sentence level. There was an example for that fundamentally. Question 2, one of the key errors you can make is you do not really understand the question itself. Now, the question is not asking you what does the dynamic evidence refer to. It is asking you what is the dynamic evidence supporting. How many of you notice that when you're reading this passage, when you're reading this question? If you assume that what you're trying to find is, hey, what is this dynamic evidence referring to, then you may have chosen option B, which is incorrect, which is not the right answer. So let's kind of get into this particular question. So which of the following, according to the passage, is supported by the dynamic evidence? So what does the dynamic evidence support? Not what is the dynamic evidence. The question is very important. If you understand that, so you already know, we already covered this. The dynamic evidence refers to the mass that is calculated, mass of the galactic center that is calculated. But what does it support? Your answer is right here. Argues for. It supports the existence of a extremely compact object with a mass 2 to 3 million times of the sun, or in other words, extremely dense object right there. That's what it supports, and that should have been your answer here. If you did this pre-thinking, then answering this question is very easy. So let me first tell you how you guys performed. Option C is the correct answer, but it's chosen by only 30% of the batch. Option B, which is the trap option choice, is where most of you, 50% of the batch actually chose this, but it's not the correct answer. And that's because in all probability, you may not have understood that you're not being asked what is the dynamic evidence. You're being asked what is the dynamic evidence referring to. Any of you who chose B, is that why you went wrong? Is it because of question, or is it because you misunderstood the option choice? Where did you go wrong? Put it on the chat. Let's find out. Option E was also somewhat popular. That's a trap answer choice as well. We'll discuss that. But already you can see this difference happening, right? The first question, 75% accuracy, but for this question, there's only 30% accuracy. Option C is the correct answer. So if you look at option A, if you chose option A, I'm happy to see most of you did not choose option A. That's completely wrong. Let's go to option B. The mass of the Milky Way calculated from the velocity of stars. As I said before, this is what this is the dynamic evidence. This is not what the dynamic evidence supports. So I read too fast the question stem. Exactly. Aditi also says because of the question. This is what I mean when I say sometimes the question stem is the reason you falter. Something there you do not notice properly. This is an example. And 50% of the batch has chosen this. So there's some learning here for you right here. Option C is the correct answer. The existence, it argues for, or it supports the existence of an extremely dense object at the center of the Milky Way, exactly as per our pre-thinking. This again tells you, if you do the pre-thinking, these answers are very, very obvious. If you don't do pre-thinking, you'll wonder how is this relevant. So that's there. So this again can happen. Some of you, nobody chose option E. D, I'm happy to see that. Option E is again a trap answer choice. When you fall for option E, that means that you understood some of it, but you're not able to connect it properly. So it is the outcome of the fact. So the evidence supports the notion that there is an extremely dense object. The evidence does not tell you that that object is a black hole. Do you guys see the difference? For the 20% who chose E, the evidence tells you that that object is dense, but it does not tell you that that object is a black hole. That is being supported by the current theory. It's only the current theory that tells you that that object can only be a black hole. That has nothing to do with this particular evidence. So if you fell for option E, that's the problem. Now let's go to option, question number 3. The serious problem referred to in highlighted portion could be solved if which of the following were true. Again, it's actually much more easier than people think. Um, again, a lot of you got confused between the two option choices. We'll get to that. So, what is a serious problem? We already discussed this. The serious problem is that energy disparity. It has nothing to do with mass, by the way. Mass side, it seems like it's a black hole. Fantastic. Energy side, there is a disparity. That disparity is the problem. The problem is energy actual from the object in the galactic center is lesser than energy theoretically calculated, which is expected if that object was a black hole, which seems to indicate that that object is not a black hole. The problem is this disparity. So the question asks us, how can you solve that disparity? Simple pre-thinking. How can you resolve this disparity? Either if this comes up to this level, or theoretical comes down to actual level. Or in other words, I'll give a very simple example. Though the actual question is about factors of 1000. Let's say energy actual is 100, energy theoretical is 500. This is the disparity right now. Ideally, this should have matched, but in reality, it's not matching. Now, if you have to resolve this disparity, either you can say that the actual is underestimated, or in other words, they're saying 100, but in reality, it's not 100, it is 500. That can solve the disparity. Or the predicted is significantly overestimated. It is said that it is 500, but in reality, it's not 500, it is only 100. These are the two ways you can resolve the disparity. This is my pre-thinking before I even jump into the question. So if this is clear, let's go to the option choices. So this particular question is an example of a failure point where the reason you fail is majorly because the option choices are tricky. How many of you felt tricked by these answer choices? They're very complicated, tough to process. How many of you struggled with these option choices for this question? While you reply to that, let me put out the statistics for this question. 50% chose option A, 40% chose the correct answer, which is option D, and around 5% chose B and C respectively. You got this. I don't know. So if you got this, I'm very happy, by the way. But if you have done this pre-thinking, you should not be following for these particular options. These here, the problem is the option choices are a little complicated. Sometimes the option choice is where you fail. You don't spend enough time understanding what it says. So let's understand this. So I'm going to use the same example of 100 and 500. Note that in reality, it's factor of 1000. So just for simplification, simplified view of understanding. So theoretical actual energy is 100. Theoretical energy is 500, let's say. Current predictions about how much energy would emanate proved to be too low. Or in other words, theoretical energy is too low. In other words, in reality, this should not be 500, this should be 1000. If that is true, does it solve the disparity or does it make it worse? For those of you who chose option A, does it not make the disparity much worse? It increases the disparity, right? I'm saying that it's too low, which means this 500 itself is too low. It should be 800, it should be 900. In that case, the gap is actually widening. It's increasing the disparity, it's increasing the problem rather than decreasing it. That's why option A is incorrect. And that is why option D is correct. The only difference is here. If your theoretical energy is too high, that means this 500 is too high. It should not be 500. It should be closer to 100. Maybe 100, and this is also 100. Then you can resolve the disparity. I hope the concept is coming through. This is why you might have faltered in a question like this. In terms of the strategic review, again, why did you go wrong here? The main reason you might go wrong here is because you did not understand this answer choice. You misinterpreted this. You did not spend adequate time, or even when you spend the time, you're not able to understand it. That's why you would go wrong here. Because this should not be too low, it should be too high. If you're not able to understand this option choice well, that's where you'll falter. So option A, if you chose option A, probably option choice analysis is your problem. Same with options B and C. Most of you did not choose it. I'll anyway be sharing the PDF with you, by the way. So let's talk about option D. either if you've done the pre-thinking like we did, this option would not be very easy to, I mean, this option should be somewhat easy to identify. And answer choice analysis, if you did not choose this, maybe you did not interpret this too low and too high correctly. Underestimation, overestimation. Think about it. Once you go through it once, you'll get this perfectly. All right, Rashid, right now I have to move on because today's session we do have a hard stop at 9:15 roughly, because there is another session. um, I'm going to be sharing the PDFs with you, and if you have any doubts even after that, do reach out to support. We will help you out. All right, do I need to learn all the RC concepts? It's good to learn concepts. Reading will definitely improve your RC as far as I'm concerned, definitely. But blindly just reading does not help. There is a way to read. There's a very active way to read that you have to do. So reading can help somewhat, but you still need a good way to read. That's what I would say. All right, perfect. So we kind of talked about why a particular question option choice is correct or incorrect. How do you identify the kind of errors you probably made, whether it is at question stem or whether it is at say option choice analysis. The next step you do is make a error log. And when I say error log, that means that you document this properly, probably in an Excel sheet or whatever it is. The idea is this gives you data that you can use both at an individual level. At a question level, it gives you micro learnings of things that you missed out on. At an aggregate level, it can tell you where you typically falter. Like I said before, say you did this process for 40 questions and you realize that in 15 to 17 of these questions, your problem is this. That means you have a tendency to not focus on the question stem, jump through it and rush to the options. What do you need to do? You need to break that tendency. You need to build in that process that, hey, whatever I do, I'm not gonna jump to the option choices before I understand the question. You have to spend that extra 10 seconds there as a process. Then you start applying, you do it. That's how you resolve a problem. So at an aggregate level, it will help you. At an individual level, it will give you learnings. So here you would write down the broad category, whether it is sentence level, paragraph level, or question stem, option choice analysis. Where is it that the problem happened? And again, you would write this in three scenarios, like I said. Whenever you rejected a correct option choice, when you selected an incorrect option choice, or when you rejected an incorrect option choice for the wrong reason, that you'll know when you go through the explanations. All right. In all these cases, for all those options, you will be writing this down. And we're going to see that in the next example. So in this explanation column, you write it in detail. What exactly did you mess up in? So here, for example, you did not understand just as, and that particular comparison tripped you up. Now write it down. You're never going to forget it for life. A lot of these things keep repeating on the GMAT. These words, just as, however, a lot of the words are very, very common. Once you've caught it once, write it down. You'll never forget it again. That's the idea. So then you can build your corrective action. To do any corrective action, just ask the question, how do I avoid making this mistake in the future? Think about it, write it down, do that, execute on that. That's what you need to do. How does this all help? It seems like a very intensive process. Some of you at this point will be like, hey, how long does it take to do this kind of analysis for each and every option choice, for each and every question? I've done this exercise for quite a while now. With a bit of practice, it still takes me around 20-25 minutes per question to do this level of analysis, strategic review, corrective action, and all that. 20 to 25 minutes on one question. When should I do that? Why should I do that? That's the question you should. How does it really help? It's intensive, but the learnings are immense. Like I said, you're learning from 50 questions. The learnings you get from 50 questions in this way is much more than the learnings you'll get from doing 1,000 questions with a very minimal review or no review at all. You learn to recognize patterns. So comparisons is something very, very specific. It's a very extensively tested concept on the GMAT. You guys will be surprised how many comparison-based questions come up on the GMAT RC. Other things, necessary versus sufficient. Just because something is necessary, it's not sufficient. That's a pattern. If you learn it in one question, you should not forget it. There'll be some other question which is testing you on the same concept. By the way, not just in RC, also tested in CR. But if you catch it here, you will never make that mistake, whether it is CR or RC. So you learn to recognize patterns. And then you also start building comprehension ability at a much higher level. You start keeping an eye for keywords. Just as that, although those are all keywords, you start building that process. You start visualizing sentences much better. You saw how that understanding that one sentence made all the difference to that one question. You do all that. End of the day, and this is something I really like, it helps you build a lot of rigor and discipline in your RC preparation. You do this level of work, you will also end up feeling a lot more confident. You're not just blindly practicing, you're practicing with real intent to learn. It makes a huge difference. So that's there. Comparison based question. The question we just did was a comparison based question. And all across the GMAT, you'll see. I can show you multiple examples. Just reach out later. So the next question you should ask is fine, such an intensive process. Why should you really listen to me? Because we've had success with our processes. So what I have here is statistical data from 2016. 2016 is a hallmark year because this is the point where GMAT Club started a verified reviews policy. Or in other words, each and every student review of a particular company that goes out is a verified review. The GMAT score is verified that hey, this is a genuine GMAT score. Since then, we have had more reviews than all the other players in this field combined. That should tell you that we definitely know how to get success. Another thing, let's talk about a little more recent data. That's 2021. Number of 700 plus scores in this year. We are at 65. And there is a bit of a difference between us, which means we are able to drive this success. And the primary reason for success is firstly, we don't teach shortcuts, we don't teach hacks. We focus on trying to build ability. Everything you're doing here, what you're trying to tell you here, none of this are shortcuts. In fact, I'm making your life more painful, but it will help you. And it's because we really focus on the process, we really focus on doing things right without hacks, without shortcuts, that we see the kind of success that we do. All right. So, what have we done so far? I gave you a little bit of a glimpse of how to do strategic review. That is, how do you identify the root cause? And that happens when you really, really think about it. Then I talked about error log, corrective action. We did apply reading strategies while we're a little bit of the reading strategies when we are doing this, but we're going to see that in more detail. And in fact, error log is for ensure that you never make the same mistake again. Reading strategies is to proactively avoid such mistakes. You're reading at a much better level so that you don't make these kinds of mistakes ever. Ever. So as far as reading strategies is concerned, we have an upcoming session this Saturday. So it's a session that we do every month. Every month around 200 to 50 students participate. We have this free session that focuses on 3 of the most important reading strategies. That I would suggest you guys can join that as well if you feel that it will help you, because I believe that it will. It kind of nicely complements what we're doing here. Reading strategies is what will help you avoid mistakes proactively. Here, you're being reactive. How do you ensure you don't do it ever again? If you follow reading strategies and read in a particular way, a lot of these things you'll pick up as you read the passage. So, upcoming session this Saturday, do try it out. You should have fun with it. So, these are the details. It's at 7:30 p.m. So, I will be taking that session along with Shraddha, who's one of the senior most uh, RC experts that we have at eGMAT. And for those of you who are wondering about, hey, what about quant? We also have a quant session this Sunday. So it's a quant workshop. So it's not topic specific. It's more like a proctored test. So it's a proctored test environment kind of thing where you will do questions with time specifications. Based on how you perform, you'll get very personalized action plans to improve on your quant scores. Very useful session. And it's one of our sellout sessions. It's very, very good. You guys should have fun with it. And for those of you who are you have GMAT on the immediate horizon, you're planning to, write the GMAT in some immediate time. You want to fix a date and set a plan and go achieve that target. Probably 700, 730 kind of score. What do you need to do? You probably need a study plan. We can help you out with that as well. We can help you by giving you a plan that is tailored to your abilities. For example, I'm very strong in RC. I'm okay. I'm not particularly strong in SC. So where I need to focus is not much on RC. It has to be on SC. So based on your initial abilities and your target ability, we have a tool that can help you arrive at very precise estimate of how long you need to spend on each concept, broken down to the sub concepts as well. How long you need to spend, what are the milestones, you have a deadline in mind, by what time should you have finished what. And we'll also help you out with what metrics you should track. How do you know that you're on track? If you're going off course, what kind of course correction should you do? So all that and more, the link is there in the chat. For those of you who feel that this can help you, please do that. So now let's get to the full length passage. I hope you guys are looking forward to this. Let's get into this. So here's the passage. Take 4 minutes. After that, typically one question should take you 1 minute. So roughly around in 8 minutes, we should reconvene. All right. So here's the passage, guys. 4 minutes for you. All right, guys, take another 15-20 seconds and then we'll start going through the questions. All right, folks, so let's start with the questions. The passage will also be available to you. Let's start with the questions. Here's question one. Let's share the form. Let's try to take around 1 minute each, guys. Guys, so let's take another 10-15 seconds maximum and let's start analyzing this. So today I'm giving you GMAT kind of time, 4 minutes to read the passage, around 1 minute to solve. All right, folks. So last 5 seconds, and then we move on to the next question. Three, two, one. So let's go to question number two. Let's start bringing our answers in, folks. All right, guys, last 10 seconds. Take your shot. Come on, don't worry about it. 3, 2, 1. So now let's move to question number 3. Let's start getting those answers in, guys. Start putting in your answers. 'All right, guys, last 10 seconds. Bring those answers in. Take your shots. 3, 2, 1. And time for the last question. Question 4 should be on your screen, and you should have the form as well. All right, guys, let's begin to get those answers in. Seems like a lot of you are having a bit of a struggle today. Let's get those answers in. We do have a bit of a time shortage today. We have a hard stop at 9:15, pretty much. All right, folks, last 10 seconds, and then let's start discussing this. 3, 2, 1, and let's hold it. Any last shots? Take it right now. Perfect. So let's kind of come back to this particular passage and let's kind of move on. All right. Falco, if it's a very, very difficult question, you can take a little around 1.5 minutes or so. If you understood the passage very well, usually it doesn't take. Most of your questions you will find you'll be able to solve within 1 minute, less than equal to 1 minute. So, how was this question? I mean, how are the questions here, guys? Let's hear some thoughts from you guys. All incorrect. Don't worry about it. It's a difficult passage. Don't worry about it. So, let me just quickly also document how we did in this 50%. All right, it's basically just these three. Perfect. Tough. Passage was dense. All right. So we're going to run very quickly through the passage analysis. That's not the core focus of this. I really want to get to the next step, that is a strategic review. But we will be sharing the PDF at the end. It will be available on the YouTubes as well. So let's quickly discuss the passage as quickly as I can. All right. Pay attention. Make sure you pay attention. Because is a keyword indicating causality. So there is some cause and effect here. What is the cause? What is the effect? I have to figure out. So because the framers of the US Constitution, so the US Constitution was written in 1787. Always keep track of that. Because these framers believed that protecting property rights relating to inventions, or in other words, inventors create inventions, the rights related to that, because they believe that protecting property rights relating to inventions would encourage the new nation's economic growth. And because of that, they gave Congress, which is the national legislature, a constitutional mandate. Mandate is responsibility. Think about mandatory, something that's mandatory, it's compulsory, which means you have to do it. Or in other words, it's your responsibility. So they gave Congress the constitutional mandate to grant patents for inventions. So fundamentally, there are these framers of the US Constitution. They believe that, hey, if we want to achieve economic growth, then we have to protect the property rights of inventors. Inventors who create stuff, they should be able to protect their rights in a court of law and all that. So because they have this belief, how do you protect somebody from cheating your inventions? You grant patents. How do you prevent somebody from copying your inventions? You grant patents. So because they had this belief that it would lead to economic growth, they gave Congress the responsibility of granting patents. Now let's move on. The resulting patent system. So as a result of this framers' belief, the patent system that came out of it, let's call it the US patent system, USPS, not postal system. The US patent system has served as a model for those in other nations. Or in other words, the author is telling you something great about this, right? It's so good, it's so well respected, it's serving as a model for other countries. Other countries are replicating this. So something great about this particular patent system. Now you have recently, which brings you to today, a recent time. Because earlier you're talking about Constitution was framed in 1787. Maybe somewhere around there, at least some 100 or 200 years ago, this patent system came into existence. Sometime in ancient, we don't know when. But right now we are coming to modern day, recently. And then you have the word however. However is a very important contrast keyword. It indicates some kind of a contrast, which means if something positive is told about the patent system and then you see the word however, I expect to see something negative about the patent system. So that's my prediction. I do this prediction as part of my understanding. So recently, however, Scholars have questioned. There are some scholars who have raised the question as to whether the American system helped achieve the framers' goals. Very simple. So you can see how by looking at that keyword, I already know that something negative is going to be described. That these are all the reading strategies I'm telling you about, which we'll discuss in Saturday's session also in detail. This particular aspect. So fundamentally, the framers believed something that hey, economic growth will come if you can protect the inventors' rights. That means you don't let people copy. Therefore, give constitution the responsibility to grant patents. This patent system, very good, widely respected. People are emulating it. Other countries are emulating it. But recently, there are these scholars who have come in and said, we really doubt whether it has helped achieve its goals. What is the goals? The goal, by the way, is right here: economic growth. The goal of the framers, achieve the framers' goals. Framers' goal is economic growth. Always keep track of that. So far, so good. Now let's move on. These scholars have contended. So very important. Not author's point of view, not necessarily author's point of view, scholar's point of view. These scholars have contended. So contended tells me they have made the point that from 1794 to roughly 1830. So pay attention to timelines. The constitution was framed in 1787. If the patent system was already active from in this period. So you're talking, I think, about the early days of the patent system. If you just look at the timelines, you know that you're talking about the early days of the patent system. 1794 to 1830. American inventors were unable to enforce their property rights. All right, you gave me the right thanks to the patent system, but I'm not able to enforce my right because people are copying me. And when I go to court of law, what is when I take it to court, what's happening? The judges were anti-patent and routinely invalidated patents for arbitrary reasons. So the scholars are making the point that hey, before 1830 till 1830, from 1794 till 1830, inventors are not able to enforce their property rights. And why is that? Because when they take these things to court, the judges are being unfair. It's as simple as that. Protecting the right of inventors is a supplementary goal. The overall goal is economic growth. I'm not saying that's not a goal, but the actual goal with which the entire patent system was, that entire thing came, the origin of the patent system was economic growth. So they want to protect the right of the inventor. That's also true. Nobody's denying that. So far so good. It says that inventors were unable to enforce their rights because the judges were unfair. Next part tells us why. This argument is based partly on examination of court decisions where patent holders brought suit as in lawsuits, brought lawsuits to the court alleging infringement of their patent rights. In simple words, somebody is copying their invention. The original inventors are taking them to court. That is infringement lawsuits. What happened in those infringement lawsuits in the 1820s, for example, 75% of these lawsuits were decided against the inventor or patentee. It is based on this number. 75% went against the patentee. That is only 25% went in favor of the patentees. It is looking at this particular number that the scholars say judges were unfair, and based on this notion that the judges were unfair, the scholar says inventors were not really able to enforce their rights, and therefore they were not able to achieve. They did not really help achieve economic freedom. So far, so good. Now let's go on. The proportion of verdicts for the patentee began to increase in the 1830s. So before 1830, something happened. They were not able to enforce. But this proportion, what proportion are we talking about? Favorable verdict divided by total verdict. This proportion, which was 25% in 1820s, it started to increase in the 1830s, suggesting to the scholars, yet again, not the author, suggesting to the scholars. So as per the scholars, based on this number, this metric increasing, they're saying that judicial attitude began shifting, or in other words, judges started becoming a little less biased, more favorable towards patentees. This is what the first paragraph is telling us. So summarizing it all very quickly, what have we done so far? First, the author set the context. He told us about the US patent system and how it came about, what was the goal with which it was created, the origin story of the US patent system. Then the author introduced the scholar's argument, which fundamentally is a takedown of the US patent system. The scholar is critical. He's saying that no, you did not achieve the goals because so and so reasons. So if you had to summarize the first paragraph, it's something like this. Introduces the patent system and then introduces a scholar's argument which goes against the patent system. You should guys, I hope you guys are following me. It should be clear. Any questions, we can help you there. All right. Put it on the chat. KP will also help you, but I'm moving forward right now. Now let's go to, we'll skip this portion. This typically we do in our reading strategy sessions, but right now let's move to para 2. Para 2, this is the first portion, all right? Not all patent disputes in the early 19th century were litigated. However, yet again, you see this keyword, however, which means somewhere there is a contrast. I need to figure out what the contrast is. And litigated cases were not drawn randomly from the population of disputes. So there is a point 1, and is a keyword that indicates an additional point. So then there is a point 2. Point 1, not all patent disputes were litigated. Or in other words, not all patent disputes came to court. And number 2, even if it came to court, not all of them were drawn randomly from the population of disputes. What does that mean? Your sample is biased. What is coming to the court is not representative of your actual population. In pure statistics terms, you would understand that, right? But how does it relate to the last paragraph? Somewhere there is a contrast word here, however. I'm still yet to figure that out. So let's talk about what the last paragraph told us. What was the scholar's argument? Point 1, inventors were not able to enforce their property rights. Why was this? Because judges were unfair. The second point was, after 1830, judges started becoming a little more fair, uh, more fair, let's say. These are the 2 points made by the scholar. Both these points are being made based on one metric. What is that metric? Proportion of favorable verdicts out of total verdicts. Based on this metric, the scholar has made these 2 points. Somehow, this, however, should be a contrast with that. We need to figure that out. I'm still not sure which point is being repeated. So let's move on. Keep that thread open and let's move on. Therefore, so conclusion indicator based on these 1 and 2 points. Point 1, point 2, based on point 1 and 2, therefore, conclusion. The rate of verdicts, that is this one, in favor of patentees cannot be used by itself to get changes in judicial attitudes. That is this portion. Changes in judicial attitudes is here, right? Post 1830, judges became more favorable. Change delta JF, you can call it. Change in judicial JA, change in judicial attitude. That's point 2. Or enforceability of patent rights. That is point 1. So what the author has done here is, firstly, this is not the scholar, this is the author. If you guys notice very carefully. And unlike the last paragraph here, I'm not mentioning scholar. So the author is trying to tell you that, hey, based on this one metric, that is favorable proportion of favorable verdicts, you made these 2 points. Now I'm telling you, this metric is a very poor metric. You cannot use this metric for these purposes. You cannot use it to say that people were not able to enforce their property rights. That is point 1 of the scholar. You cannot use it to say that there was a change in judicial attitude post 1830. That's point 2 from the scholar. You cannot use that metric. So the author is attacking the metric which is used by the scholar. Why? On what is the basis of this? Because of the fact that you're using this metric which is based on court cases. But firstly, not all disputes come to court, and secondly, even amongst those that come to court, it is not randomly drawn. It's biased. Your sample is biased, or in other words, your sample is not representative of the actual population of disputes. So that's the first attack by the author on the scholar's argument. Now let's move on. If is a condition keyword, so you'll see something like if then or if but. If early judicial decisions were prejudiced against patentees, one might expect that subsequent courts, allegedly more supportive of patent rights, would reject the normal precedents. So the general expectation, if indeed this pre-1830 cases, the judges were actually biased, you remember the scholar says routinely invalidated for random reasons. If indeed they were that bad, then more modern subsequent courts, which are supposedly more friendly towards patentee and patent rights, they would completely reject those former court cases. But the contrast with if is here. But in reality, those pre-1830 cases have been cited as frequently as later decisions, and they continue to be cited today. Or in other words, the expectation was that the modern day courts would thrash those decisions, but in reality, those very same court decisions from pre-1830 are still being used today, are still being considered as valid references today. They're still being referred to today as valid judgments, which indicates that, as per the author, you cannot say there is a bias then. Suggesting that the early decisions, many of which clearly declared the patent rights were a just recompense. Just means fair. Recompense, I'm not sure what it means. Sometimes you come across words you don't know, with probably something to do with compensation, just reward, probably, for inventive ingenuity, provided a lasting foundation for patent law. Or in other words, these early decisions are still providing a lasting foundation for patent law. In simple words, the author is attacking this point that judges were unfair before 1830. This point, he's saying that if the judges were really unfair, then those judgments will not be used today. But in reality, those judgments are still being cited today, used today, which means you cannot say early judiciary was unfair. This is what you should get. Now let's move to the last part. And by the way, I can already. By the way, if you are with me so far, you can predict what the author will do next. He's already attacked the metric which was used by the scholar. He's attacked point one. What will logically follow? He's going to attack this point also. Even before reading the next portion, I can predict what will happen. So what is going to happen? The proportion of judicial decisions in favor of patentees began to increase during the 1830s. So this is point two from the scholar's argument. After 1830s, there was a change in judicial attitude. Judges became a little more fair. That's what the scholar says. Now the author is attacking that. That proportion increased. I'm not denying that that proportion increased. That proportion increased, but it did not increase because of what you say. It increased because of a change in the underlying population of cases brought to trial, which we need to understand further. Let's move on. This change was partly due to 1836 revision of the patent system, because they're all keywords indicating causality. An examination procedure still in use today was instituted, in which each application is scrutinized for its adherence to patent law. Previously, $30, you just have to pay. Any Tom, Dick, and Harry can get a patent. So fundamentally, what is the author's logic here? Scholar, you say that the proportion of favorable verdict increased because judiciary became more fair. I am telling you that it's not because of that. Judiciary was fair then, it is fair today also. The real reason is because the proportion of favorable verdicts, there is an underlying change in the type of patents that are coming to court. Why is there an underlying change in the type of patents that are coming to court? Because there has been a revision in the patent process. To get a patent earlier, just pay $30, anybody can get a patent, which means anybody can do any kind of crap and get a patent. But now it's not like that. Very strict processes have been put in. So your patents are going to be more high quality, proper patents, which will not get bounced. So what the author is trying to say is, before 1830, a lot of rubbish patents came to the court, and a very proper judiciary obviously thrashed them left, right, and center. But nowadays, after 1836, thanks to that patent revision, the patents are much more proper, compliant to all the necessary standards. That is why the underlying population of patents itself is more high quality. That's why when they come to court, the same judges with the same level of fairness are more accepting of it. So this is the alternate reason that is provided by the author to counter the reason provided by the scholar. I hope you guys are following my line of thought here. So summarizing it all, in this paragraph, the author has gone after each and every point used by the scholar. The metric used by the scholar, argument one used by the scholar, the point one made by the scholar, point two made by the scholar. Each and everything the author has gone after in this particular paragraph. So that's what this is. So now I'll move on. You don't have a main point question here, but if you had it, fundamentally, why did the author write this passage? What does the author want you to take away? The author wants you to take away the fact that he does not agree with the scholar's argument. It's fundamentally a rebuttal to the scholar's argument, to some particular argument that's raised against the US patent system. This is the level of understanding that I want you to have before you go to questions. If you do reading strategies properly, you can do that, by the way. So very quickly, we're just going to run through some questions. We only have another 10 minutes. It's a hard stop, unfortunately, today. But don't worry about it. I'll tell you right now, you guys are going to have access to the PDF. Everything is there. If something is not clear, you guys can reach out to support@egmat.com. We'll be happy to help you out as well. All right. So question one, the passage implies that which of the following was a reason? So firstly, as per the passage, not the scholar, the author's view. So as per the author, why did the proportion of verdicts in favor of patentees increase in the 1830s? We already know this now. It's not because of judicial attitude. It's because qualitative change happened in the population, which was triggered by patent process, 1836 revision process, making it stricter to get patents. If you have understood this, then getting this answer correct is not going to be that difficult. All right. This is why, by the way, option A is the correct answer. Around 50% of you chose option A. I'm not going to discuss each and every option. I'm going to stick to the most popular, the correct option choice and the most popular incorrect option choice. Don't worry, you'll have the PDF. You can check the rest of it whenever you feel like it. All right. So, patent applications approved after 1836 were more likely to adhere closely to patent law. This is what we saw, right? It's that 1836 revision which made patents stricter. That's why this happened. If you did not choose this is the important part. Pay attention. If you did not choose this, what could have gone wrong? Firstly, you probably did not. There's a possibility that you did not understand the real purpose of that sentence. Why did the author put 1836 patent revision? What is that second paragraph, that second portion all about? You should realize that it is rebutting the scholar's argument. It is providing the reason why the verdict started to increase. Any of you had this problem? I'm just quickly asking, any of you had this problem? If you had this problem, then this is what you should write down. The reason I did not choose option A is because I did not really understand what that sentence was doing there. How does it connect? How does it really connect to the rest of the stuff? That's what you need to do. Again, if you do not do that pre-thinking, if you do the pre-thinking, by the way, it's a very intuitive and easy option choice, right? The minute you see that, you kind of know it's the correct answer. So if you did not do pre-think, if you did pre-thinking, you'll find out that these are the only possible answer choices. Something along these lines is the only possible answer, and therefore you would have got it. The only other option is if you kind of rush through this in a hurry, and that means you have to read slowly. You have to make sure you do not rush. So your corrective action, just ask the question, what will you do to make sure you don't make the same mistake again? Your corrective action should be based on that. Do that level of introspection and analysis. It honestly takes me 20 to 25 minutes for at least for each and every question that I do, each and every option choice like this, but it's worth it. Now, let's talk about other options that were popular. B was not popular, thankfully. C was not popular. D was not touched. Option E was popular. 30% of students chose option E. This, by the way, teaches a very important concept. That concept is, when you look at proportion, pay attention to what the proportion is telling you. The passage only talks about favorable verdict as a proportion of total verdict. This is talking about disputes which came to trial versus total disputes. It's a completely different proportion. If you fell for this, you did not really understand that this is completely out of the scope. Nowhere in the passage is this discussed. This particular proportion is not inferable from the passage. This is not a sentence level thing. Overall, in the passage itself, nowhere is this particular proportion discussed. So for me, this is a passage comprehension issue at the overall passage level. You haven't figured out that this particular proportion in option D is not talked about at all. You should not have chosen this at all. Right? So with that, let's go to question 2. Question 2, passage implies that scholars mentioned. All right. So simply what is asking you first, the first thing you should notice here is you're being asked for the scholar's view and not the author's view. That's the first thing you should realize. Scholars' point of view about USPS, rather scholars' criticism of the US patent system. Scholars' argument is purely paragraph 1. In paragraph 1, these are the only points of the argument that are made. And these two portions are talking about the judiciary. The only 2 points about the US patent system itself are point 1, hey, the patent system may not have helped achieve the framers' goal. And point 2, despite this patent system being there, inventors were unable to enforce patent rights. These are the only 2 points that the scholar makes about the patent system. If you do this pre-thinking and go to the option choices, you can eliminate a lot of the option choices. So for this question, the correct answer, by the way, is option E, is chosen by only 30% of students. So I'm going to discuss option B, which is the second most popular choice. Its criteria for granting of patents were not clear. Why is this the correct answer? Why is this incorrect? Think about it. All we know from that passage, from the scholar's argument, all we know is that inventors had a tough time defending their patents in court. Do we know that they had a tough time granting in terms of getting their patents? Actually, the passage tells you that they got it for $30. It's probably not, you cannot say that the criteria of granting patents is not clear. We defending patents in courts is not same as granting patents. If you did not understand this, either from the passage you are not able to make that inference, so something in the passage is not clear, or you rush through this option choice. You just saw the word patent and fell for it, criteria patent, and you fell for it without thinking. So think about what is it that went wrong for you. That's where you find. C has a very similar reason. Nothing about receiving patents. Granting and receiving patents is different from patent rights, defending a patent in court. Option E is the only correct option for this question. And by the way, again, I'm trying to tell you the power of pre-thinking. If you've done a little bit of pre-thinking, you will get this. That's why I say failure in doing analysis before jumping to option choices. You will get this then. Question 3 is all right. I'll just discuss question 3 and then we'll leave it at that because I think we are already running short of time. So, what is the question? What would the author and scholar disagree about as far as patents before 1830? So, question is very clear. We are talking about before 1830 patents. Both the author and scholar will agree to the fact that these patents they got rejected. A lot of these patents got rejected. That's a fact. The reason why is the point of difference. The scholar says it's because the judges were unfair. The author says it's because earlier those patents were not proper. Only after 1836 patent revision happened. So the fact is the same. What do they disagree on? The reason behind that. That's the only thing that could be the correct answer here, as far as cases before 1830 are concerned. So, which is why the correct answer for this is not option A. Let's look at the correct, how many people. The correct answer is option D, which is chosen by around 36% of students. And option C is the most popular. I'll get to that directly. You guys can go through all of this, by the way. Option C, whether the patents were particularly likely to be annulled by judges. A lot of you fell for this, but the thing is, again, focus on the question stem. The question is asking you where do they disagree. Both of them, both the scholar and author agree that those patents were likely to be annulled by judges. Both the author does not dispute that. The reason why this is happening, that is the point of disagreement. If you fell for this, you fell for that trap. Think about it. So either you do not understand that the question is asking you for a point of disagreement, or you understood the choice, but you did not understand this option choice properly. You did not realize that, hey, this is a point of similarity, not a point of difference. It's as simple as that. It's a beautifully layered question that way. Some of you even fell for option E, but again, this is again a very important learning. Proportion is not the same as absolute number. Just because proportion increases does not mean absolute number increases. Wherever you see the passage is talking about proportions and the option choice is talking about number, that's a red flag. You need to really analyze that. Can you infer about numbers based on proportion? The passage talks about proportions. This talks about numbers. This, by the way, is again something that you would understand very, 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 very. This is a pattern that repeats. That's something you would really need to understand. So let's skip question 4 because we are definitely out of time. Don't worry, the explanations are here. Anything is not clear, you can reach out to us and support at GMAT. We'll help you out. Today, unfortunately, we do have to do a bit of a hard stop. You guys already know the correct answers because the form had it anyway. Some quick takeaways for you. This passage teaches you to keep an eye out for author's view versus third-party view, scholar's view. You cannot infer a number based on proportions. That's something you would see. Some of you made that mistake of choosing that option E in question 1 because you did not understand what is the proportion being talked about, right? Some of you fell for scholar's view in question stem. It is asking for scholar's view, but you chose an option that's actually the author's view. So those kinds of learnings are also there. But to summarize, to all this, we have covered how to do strategic review. What is strategic review? Thorough analysis of how root cause of why you did an error. If you do that, document it with an error log, build the corrective actions based, asking the question, how do I avoid this error the next time? It will ensure that you don't make the same mistake again. In solving the passage, I detailed a little bit about the reading strategies. For a little more about it, make sure you join the session on Saturday because there we'll get in depth into 3 of the most important reading strategies. You'll find it very useful. So I want you to take away this. Reading strategies, strategic review process, proper error log built with corrective action, consistent effort. RC is the easiest section of all. I don't care about SC. I believe RC is easier. Don't take it from me. There are people who have done this, who have been in this journey. They talk about how reading strategies helped out, how the process approach really helped them do this. More about RC process and how the process orientation helped. I want to leave you with this quote. This guy tells you about the level of rigor, the level of review that you do of your analysis. That's kind of what we are trying to focus on today. It's about doing that level of analysis. Never have I reviewed my own mistakes in this level of depth before. Importance of revision. Understand why you chose an incorrect answer, why did you not select, why you chose a correct answer, why you did not choose a correct answer, why you chose an incorrect answer, and even when you reject an incorrect answer, is the reason correct? Review all those at a very the kind of detail that we are trying to do here. You can work wonders. Quick reminder again, Saturday we have the free session, reading strategies. All of you who felt some value in this session, please go for it. Quant workshop coming up. Make sure quant workshop, for those of you who are looking for a little bit of quant help, make sure you go for this, and reach out for a study plan if this is something that you're interested in. With that, I'm done from my side. If you guys have any other further points, we can. I Good. Any other feedback also very quickly, maybe another 2 minutes max, and then we could wrap it up. So this time we were a little short of time uh, compared to the usual sessions because we do have this other session coming in. Thanks for the feedback, Danya. So the PDF is shared with you. Go through it. The points should be clear. If in any of the questions something is not clear, you can reach out to us. We will help you out on that. Don't worry about it. Three to 4 minutes for any passage you read, and less than equal to 1 minute for any question you solve. That's the typical time, Tribhuvan. We won't be you have to the idea is to reach that level where you are able to comprehend at least 90% of the passage. It is sometimes possible, sometimes you get monster passages, so it is sometimes possible that uh, you're not able to get it that at that level, but usually you should aim for at least 90 to 95% of comprehension. So that's there. All right, guys, I think with that we need to have a hard stop today. There are some time constraints today, so I hope that this session was useful to you, albeit a little rushed. I hope the session was useful to you. Go again go through what we have discussed: the strategic review process, identifying the root cause of your errors, building an error log, identifying the corrective action that works for you. Do all that. You can really make RC your fortress. Trust me, it's easier than SC and CR if you ask me. All right, guys, thanks a lot. With that, we'll close.